ask you guys right now, what's better? Hey, it's not the questions you ask, it's the answers that you get. In this video, I'm going to teach you a simple question framework that will get your prospects to buy now.
That's a pretty bold claim. This is Cole Gordon. He's the founder of Closer.io. Today, we're going to be diving into his one call close framework to figure out whether this is actually a thing. Do people actually one call close? Is it okay to let people think about it? We're going to dive into the video today. If you don't know me, my name is Caleb Lassar. I'm responsible for millions of dollars of deals being done in a consultative way. We don't do the overly pushy, manipulative, egomaniac style selling here. We are more consultative. We put people at the core of our process. So if you love that, you'll love these videos. Let's lock into today.
Again, for context, in my sales process, the way I teach it, there's the introduction, which is rapport and frame the call. There's the information gathering phase. And then after that, there's the transition, which is the bridge between where you ask questions at the pitch. There's the pitch, there's the committing phase, and then there's objections.
That's pretty solid. That's the similar structure that what we run as well. I like that he's broken up discovery and then also a summary or a transition into the close. We add something in there called reverse selling, which is a process in which we get the prospect to tell us why they want their problem solved and they buy into the process.
Okay, so what I want to teach you is inside of the information gathering phase, a questioning framework that really helps you get the gold. Okay, so if when you're an experienced salesperson, what you know, or what you probably know, is that you really have to get to these emotional reasons and personal reasons of why this is important to them and why they have to do this right now. If you ask, and I don't know about you guys, when I used to see this on sales scripts, I used to cringe and it used to make me feel uncomfortable. If you see, especially in a high-level business conversation, if you just sit there on the call and you're getting their goals and you're like, all right, John, like, why is that important to you personally?
This is so true. There's a way better way to position these, what we call emotional questions, or how we can get prospects to show us the emotional implication of the cost of an action. So the reason why we need emotion is emotion exists as the fire under their bum. It's the urgency in order for them to actually do something. So in a lot of the B2B deals that I see where it's logic to logic, the reason why we get, I need to think about it, is there's no urgency. Urgency comes from emotion. You can also have too much emotion. And we call this the Tony Robbins close, where I love the guy. I think his work is fantastic, but people get all in their pain and then they get all in their emotional future and there's no logic to back it up. And so what happens is they end up having buyer's remorse. So you can't just have emotion to emotion because that creates buyer's remorse. And you can't just have logic to logic because then there's no fire under their bum. There's no urgency to make a decision. You need to balance both.
Or, yeah, John, okay, what would that do for you? Or, well, John, like, but why is this important now, though? With certain prospects, if you ask those questions, they'll give you the answers that you want and everything's going to be okay. All right? But
that's true. The more sophisticated the buyer, the weirder they're going to find this. The less sophisticated buyer, they'll probably just let you away with it. But if you're dealing with anyone that has been around the block before, as in they know how this works, they've been on a sales call, they're just going to go, I know what you're doing, man. And it's gross.
With the most sophisticated prospects and the toughest prospects, not only will that turn them, well, not only will it not work, it's going to turn them off. Right? They're going to be like, dude, can we just talk about what this is? So you need a good socially aware way to ask, not to necessarily ask the same question, but to get the same information. Because it's not the questions you ask, it's the answers that you get. And the reason...
Yeah, I like that. Not the questions that you ask, it's the answers that you get.
For that is essentially, like we always cover in this channel, is there 7 beliefs the prospect needs to have to buy: pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, trust. And
whoa, let's slow that down. Okay, so these 7 beliefs that they need to buy: pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, and trust. Let's go through each one. Pain, I would say absolutely. The way we describe pain is a gap between what they are experiencing now and their expectation of where they thought they would be. We call this in sales psychology cognitive dissonance. What is the cognitive dissonance between what you're experiencing now with your sales results and your expectation of where you thought you'd be by now? What are you making in terms of commission right now? And what did you expect that you'd make in commission by now? That's what we call cognitive dissonance. And then obviously that's split between logic and emotion. The second thing he's talked about here is doubt. So doubt whether or not they can do it, or this could be self-doubt. One of the biggest objections that you have to overcome is people's doubting themselves or doubting that the program or the thing or the offer will work for them. Then cost, desire. So cost, this is an interesting one. I'm not a huge fan of forcing people to put things on credit cards and that kind of thing. I think that people are either financially qualified or not. And why are we selling to broke people anyway? If someone doesn't have the money, why are we on an offer that's selling to people that don't have money? Let's just sell to people that have money. Desire comes as a result of the proper gap being built. So For example, if we have, it sucks right now because you're not making the amount of commission. Where do you want to be? You want to be making double the commission. What would that mean to you if you did do that? ABC. That gap itself, the conflict of dissonance, creates desire. Then obviously money, I think, is associated to cost, unless he's referring to cost as consequence or an action. So what happens if you do nothing? What's the pain? Then what's the cost of the inaction of leaving that for 12 months? Support and trust is, am I going to be supported in this process? And can we trust that you deliver? So yes, but like, how do you actually use this in a conversation? It feels like a lot, whereas just give me a straight framework, Caleb, where I could just work from.
What we want them to do is speak out loud, essentially those 7 beliefs on the call before we transition to the close. Because in doing so, we're going to create an objectionless close, and the prospect just closes themselves.
Right. So there is hidden objections. And so people object to one of those 7 things and you need to pre-handle them.
Right? And so again, when they speak it out loud, it's leveraging the most persuasive principle that Robert Cialdini talks about in his book, Influence. It leverages the consistency bias.
Great book, by the way.
Which essentially is the bias that people want to appear consistent. So if you get them saying the right things prior to the call or prior to the pitch and prior to you asking them for money, they're going to be much more likely to not give you those objections. That's why the 7 beliefs exist. It leverages that consistency. So again, the problem is for beliefs like cost, right? Why do they have to do this now? Or part of desire is filling out, which is another belief, is figuring out why is this important to them personally? What is this going to do for another area of their life? Those questions are kind of like, especially in a business conversation, they're kind of like icky to ask. And people don't like being asked them. And not only will they not give you that great of responses, they're like turned off, like I just said. So I'm going to teach you.
Fair enough. The Cialdini law he's referring to is the law of consistency and commitment. So the full law is that people are more likely to act in accordance with something that they have already said or already committed to, because they care about how they are perceived in other people's eyes. So if I have said that I'm already going to do something, I am more likely to agree with that statement in future. If I said that now is the right time to do this, I'm way less likely to say that I'm not going to do this at the end of the call. This is really subtle psychology, really important to know about persuasion, because it is way more persuasive to have someone else or the prospect tell you why than you tell them why, because there's that little defensive mechanism in their head, the little sales resistance that sits at the front that goes, yeah, but what if you're lying? So there's this little mistrust in everybody. So it's way more powerful to get them to tell you why. That's why the law of consistency and commitment exists.
Framework, just tremendously better to ask these questions and get all the information you need from that type of stuff, all the personal, all the ooey gooey stuff that really makes them buy. The old way to do it, and the wrong way, in my opinion, is let's say you're going through goals and you say, well, hey, John, I know you want to get to 15K a month. How would that affect your personal life? Right? So that's, I'm not saying that can't work, but that to me, that is like mediocre salesperson. Here's the advanced way to do it.
It's good if you aren't already asking these questions. So what's not really being revealed here is you need logic and emotion. So if you're not even asking emotional questions about grounding the goal, the logical goal, into their life by saying, how would life change if you actually pulled this off? That's better than nothing. And most of the reps that I see, they don't balance logic and emotion. So it's better than nothing if you're doing nothing. Now, if you have that dialed in, we can take it to the next level. Let's see what Cole says.
A framework called permission, reason why, question. So essentially what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you an example, but I'm going to ask permission. I'm going to tell them the reason why I'm asking the question framed in their own best interest. So essentially preeminently framed in their own best interest. That means preeminently. So I'm going to get permission. I'm going to use a preeminent reason why, and then I'm going to ask the question. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I'll say, gotcha, John. Well, can I ask you a personal question? And the reason why I'm asking is what's really important to me is not just helping you build a real estate business. It's building you wealth and helping you accumulate the amount of income that you want to have, but also one that empowers you to live whatever lifestyle that you want to live. So when you think about that, what comes up for you? What's the non-monetary goals? What are the personal goals that you want your business to allow you to achieve? Okay. So
that's really good. So we actually call this priming. We call this, there's 2 types of primes. We call this a softening prime. So a softening prime is made up of 3 steps. The first one is permission. And then the second one is a reason why. And then the third one is a negation. So negation is like the word but. So it's like, hey, Cole, can I ask you a question? This might sound a little ooey gooey, but It's important. And then the reason why it's important that I ask so that we can best figure out how to help you. If you achieve this goal of making $20,000 a month, what would that mean to you? So it's essentially the same thing that we do, and we're just a little bit more direct without then just go into the mean to you. Now, the reason that this works is when we get permission and we give a reason why, and we put the objection out front. So whatever it is that we think is too direct, this works for everything, right? And this is the core principle behind linguistic priming, which is in our playbook. You get a copy down below. It's only $12, is we can prime anything. So one of the other things that I like to prime is when we're dealing with prospects that are really difficult, like you just can't get an answer out of them, we can do what's called a mismatch prime. So a mismatch prime is, hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah, chances I've got this wrong, but is it ABC? Or this might not be the case, but is it ABC? And so what will happen is if you have these disagreeable prospects that are really hard to lock down, what they'll do with you is they'll disagree with the disagreement. So when you say this might not be the case, they'll disagree with it. And subconsciously they'll go, yeah, this is the case. And they'll actually answer your question. So that's another version of priming to keep you back pocket. This is really cool.
Let me ask you guys right now, what's better? Hey, John, what would that do for you personally? Or the thing I just demonstrated 2 seconds ago? Obviously the second one. And I can tell you, for the reason I created that whole question framework, and that exact word for word thing I've used a bajillion times, the reason I created that is because I couldn't use, well, John, what it's going to do for you personally. I felt weird. I felt like a salesperson putting them through a sales process. This makes them feel like I actually care, because I do. Okay?
This is really powerful. I really like this. We actually have another one that we call a third-party gate. So a third-party gate is where we use an example, a metaphor, or a story to convey the specific emotional outcome that we're going for. So here's what I mean specifically. So let's say, for example, we want to elicit the emotion with a prospect, then it feels weird. So what we can say is we can use a third party. So we open up this gate of a third party, so another client or a metaphor or a story. We can say, look, John, clients in your position have said that achieving this goal has meant A, B, C emotions to them. Does that resonate with you? So what we've done there is we've indirectly asked the question of or we've indirectly positioned a question to get them to answer with an emotion safely. The reason why it's safely is because they're not directly answering it. They're observing clients in their position have said A, B, C. That makes it so much more less direct. And this is important because we are most persuasive when we are not being direct. So the most powerful persuasion is indirect influence. Indirect influence means we don't confront somebody directly. We actually create a scenario in which they can see themselves. So when we tell a story or a metaphor, then they put themselves in that scenario. So another one is, let's say, for example, we've got someone that's stuck on, they've been burned before. One of my favorite metaphors to tell or stories to tell is the one of the Chinese farmer. And so this person might be like, yeah, but what if the worst case scenario happens? And, what if all the bad things happen and it doesn't work for me? Have you heard the story of the Chinese farmer? And they go, no, what's that? And you turn around and you say, okay, cool. So there's this Chinese farmer, him and his son were tending the crops in their field, and one of their horses escaped from the farm and ran away. And so all of the villagers turned around and they said to him, oh, that sucks, poor you. The farmer turned around and goes, well, maybe yes, maybe no. The next day, the horse came back and there was a whole lot of other horses that brought, 5 or 6 other horses with them back to the farm. And the villagers turned around and said, wow, you're so lucky. And the farmer turned around and said, well, maybe yes, maybe no. Then the next day, as the farmer's son was tending the horses, he fell off and broke his leg. All the villagers came around again. They said, that sucks. Your son's broken his leg. Farmer turns around and says, maybe yes, maybe no. And the very next day, the government came around to conscript all of the boys in the village. And obviously his son couldn't go because he had a broken leg. So his villagers came around and said, you're so lucky that your son doesn't have to go to war. And the farmer turned around and says, well, maybe yes, maybe no. What can you learn from that story? And so we can use the power of these stories that have this idea, which is, well, maybe yes, maybe no, right? Maybe you'll fail, maybe you won't. It really depends on how you choose to see it. And so this power of this third-party gate technique where you can use metaphors, you can use stories, you can use parables, you can use client results to help this prospect develop a new belief system to overcome the limitation that would cause them to not purchase. So I hope that was valuable for you today. I'm going to try and keep these videos a little bit shorter. So if you do like the shorter format, that we just pull out one lesson instead of maybe like an entire YouTube video review, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you the next one. Take care.